Good evening, everyone. This is a quick audio check. If you guys can hear me, just post yes on the chat window. Okay, very good. I'm receiving multiple yeses. Okay, so I think it's good to start right now. So welcome everyone for one of our UAE VMUG webinars for this quarter. Today, I'm very happy, to have one of our community members, okay, who will be presenting 7 reasons why to upgrade to vSphere 7. Subinson Thomas is a senior cloud architect. I believe, the last 1 month and a half has been very exciting period for VMware. We have seen lots of product releases like ESXi and vSphere 7. We have already had the session for ESXi 3.0, and inshallah in June we'll have another one, which will be a deep dive. Just a quick reminder of our social channels. You can follow us, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You can, if you have any queries, you can even contact me or Rajesh. I believe you guys have our contacts already. So without any further ado, I'll leave the stage to Subinson. Subinson, if you can hear me, you can start sharing your presentation.
Hi, good evening, guys. I hope you guys can see my screen now. Hello?
We did see your screen briefly, but it's gone. You stopped sharing.
Is everyone able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you all the guys joining the session. Thank you, Marwan. Thank you, Rajesh, for giving me the opportunity to present. So like Marwan mentioned, I mean, it's an exciting month for VMware and all the VMware users, right? So we're seeing a lot of upgrades, a lot of updates, a lot of new products which we are seeing. So I wanted to quickly take you through the good 7 reason to upgrade to vSphere 7, right? So these are the functionality which most of us excited to understand what is it and how we're going to use it and how we're going to get benefit of it, right? So I'll just start with a quick profile view of mine. Basically, I'm working as an enterprise solution cloud architect for the last 14 years. I have an experience from building the infrastructure with private, public, hybrid, and multi-cloud infrastructure, right? So, and also multiple roles which I haven't handled as like an information security and network roles in the past. Currently, I work with Injazat Data Systems as a senior cloud architect, right? So that's a high-level overview on my profile. So the agenda basically we wanted to talk is 7 reasons. So the functionalities which VMware has recently added. One is basically the vSphere Lifecycle Manager, which is called VLCM in short. We'll have like 5 more branches of that. We will understand that in a while. What is that we are getting from an identity federation? That's a security enhancement which introduced in vSphere 7. We have another one which is vSphere Trust Authority. We have assignable hardware, basically that again good news, right? So if you have a similar hardware that you wanted to move certain particular component like your fax card, those kind of components that can be migrated if you have a similar hardware. We'll go through that in detail. Now there is a good improvement on DRS functionality. Like let's call it DRS2. Let's see that also. What is the functionality which improvement which we have it in DRS. We also have an improvement on the vMotion. We'll go through that. Then the best functionality so far is basically the introducing the Kubernetes to vSphere 7, right? So that also we will get to know. And I also wanted to walk you through what's been removed from vSphere 7, the functionality which was there till 6.5, 6.7, and what we have removed from vSphere 7, right? And how do we get prepared for an upgrade? There are vSphere assessment tools, basically allow us to understand the readiness of the infrastructure to go for an vSphere 7 upgrade, right? So we'll go through this in detail. Then, okay, I'll start with a vSphere Lifecycle Manager, right? So the vSphere Lifecycle Management has like 5 major component, which is basically spread across declarative ESXi cluster management. We have a full stack firmware updates, which we can do it from the vSphere Lifecycle Manager. We have an OEM customization. We have cluster quick start workflow, basically applying it across the cluster. We also have an automatic compatibility checks, right? This all can be performed from single umbrella under one roof, which is Lifecycle Manager, which is one of the component which has been introduced in vSphere 7, right? So let's little dive deep into it. Now, when we look at a declarative ESXi cluster management, so it's basically a foundation functionality of VLCM, right? When we enable this cluster image management, right? So the VLCM is enabled and the cluster image management, we can set up in a particular functionality called the desired state, right? So desired state is nothing but a preferred state of your infrastructure, right? The ESXi component. Now, once this particular functionality is enabled, the next thing which happens is all the ESXi hosts by default enforced to adhere to the state, right? So when a particular host move out or drifts from the particular state, right? So maybe they are non-compliant, they're moving non-compliant. What immediately happen is with the help of declarative lifecycle management, the host is automatically remediated immediately to comply to the desired state, right? So now the next question is, what all can be covered with this declarative ESXi cluster manager, right? And what is that we are going to manage? What is that we are going to help with it, right? So there's basically a ESXi version, which is basically an ESXi 7.0 or the later, which is basically the new one. We can use a vendor add-on, right? So vendor add-on is nothing but particularly vendors are started providing the firmware and driver. I have another slide for that, so I'll just walk you through that. Now, firmware and driver. So we all struggle to manage this, right? So ESXi management, we had a component which help us to do and update the ESXi version manager. But however, the add-ons, we never had this functionality, right? So we had this functionality, but it is a direct integration which can fetch the vendor add-ons as an image or an OVO file, and we can push it to that. Now we have firmwares and updates. Now, for example, imagine a scenario wherein we bought in a server. That server comes with so-and-so hardware. Now, that particular server is from a vendor. Now we are adding, to get an additional functionality, we are adding additional hardwares, right? So for example, that could be a NIC card, that could be an HPA card. Now, with this particular functionality, you can also manage the firmware and driver for that. So from a holistic perspective, we can do all this from the VLCM, right? Now, what is that required for us to, as a prerequisite, what is that we require to be effectively manage in a declarative ESXi management, right? So what is that required? Now, all of our ESXi host or the particular cluster, that has to be in a 7.0 or a higher, right? And all the hosts must be, all the hosts in the cluster must be from the same vendor. Like be it, for example, if the cluster is built on Dell servers, or HP servers, we need to have that everything from the same vendor. So that will help us to have a single vendor add-ons and the firmware managed easily, right? Ideally from the same make and model, right? Say for example, a cluster is built on HP DL380s. Let's have that cluster built basically on DL380s and the Gen 10 or Gen 9, right? Now, important point to be note, this particular NSXT functionality is not currently supported on the first release of declarative management. So that's a word of caution, right? Now let's look at what is the next part, which is basically when I say full stack firmware upgrade, right? This is nothing but a hardware support manager. For example, is a hardware support manager from Dell is basically the Dell Open Manage, right? Or HP got amplifiers. So basically, where we can get an OVF image which contains all the firmware related to the particular server, right? So the best part is managing it separately is difficult. Now, what happened is uh, this will come as a plugin to the vCenter server extension, right? And that can be accessed and updated using the HSM module. The HSM can be updates are accessed and managed by this particular VLCM functionality, right? So, like example, I mentioned about some of the HSM modules, like hardware supported managers are like Dell Open Manage and HP amplifiers. Now we mentioned about simplified OEM customization, right? So we used to have like a specific ESXi image built for a particular server, right? So we used to go and download from an OEM specific ESXi host. Now that is completely can be decoupled now. So you don't necessarily to have a specific image downloaded from a vendor. Instead of that, what in vSphere 7 what we have done is basically we have deassembled that particular functionality. So your ESXi is just an ESXi, right? And what happened is you get to replace that. You get to insert the vendor add-ons, right? So, and the customization for a specific selected servers, we can go in by when customizing our own ESXi image. Let's put it in that way, right? So instead of downloading from an HP or Dell website, we just install an ESXi, and what we do is we insert particular streamline the OEM vendors components, right? So for example, drivers an example. Now we mentioned about a cluster quick start workflow. So it is nothing but basically when you add a particular cluster into it, you wanted to baseline that with an add-ons. You wanted to baseline that with a set of firmwares. It can be applied across the cluster. Right, so this is basically in a workflow wherein you will go into the particular functionality and you apply it. You choose which base ESXi version you wanted to get into, and what particular vendor add-ons or optional component you wanted to apply to that particular cluster, right? So if it is in a Dell, you will install with an ESXi, you will push a Dell add-ons to that particular particular clusters, right? So this makes life all more easy, right? Now at the end, now what happened is basically a part of VLCM, we also have an automatic compatibility check. We all remember that, going into VMware compatibility guide, checking what is compatible, what is not compatible, the processors, drivers, NIC cards, HBAs. Now, what that is introduced in particular thing is basically an automatic compatibility check introduced into the VLCM, right? So what happens with that is basically it also checks the most compatible firmwares and drivers that's using the desired state, right? So basically we have baselined it within a desired state when we start the process. Now it also checks, it goes and checks in the VMware compatibility list. Now it's called HCL, hardware compatibility list. This particular HCL and the vSphere Lifecycle Manager management that syncs with our vCenter servers, right? So that makes things lot easier. If you wanted to do a particular hardware compatibility check, what we go to the particular cluster, we check for an update, and this gives us the list of available most compatible components, right? Then this helps us to resolve potential compatibility issues, right? That help us in a big way. I'll give you a best example, like any hardware vendor, most important thing is the firmware, right? So we all know, for example, let's take an example of a HCI infrastructure. Now, in that particular thing, what happened is we all know VxRail, right? VxRail comes with an image. Now we know it has a different network component. It has an ESXi version. It has a vSAN component. Now, with the help of HCL, it chooses the best firmware and drivers, right, and hardware devices that picks up, and it places to right order, right? So desired state, again, put it into the desired state. With the first release, it is limited to the vSAN particular storage controllers. Again, certain set of NVMe devices are also checks for the compatibility part, right? So this gives in a good. So this enable us to go in a pre-approved or validated configuration, right? So this help us to not fail once we start. So it's a kind of a validated infrastructure. Now these are the major 5 components which covers on the vSphere lifecycle management, right? So now let's look at what is the next improvement. So next improvement which we have is basically identity federation. Now, how do we ensure organization security posture, right? How do we improve it? So it is within a very good account management. Many of the infrastructure account management is done within a PAM, different type of access. And the next one would be in a good password hygiene mechanism, right? So how do we maintain the password? How we secure it? PAM could be a complementing component for that. Now, the passwords, the current world, passwords are no more secure, right? So no more secure as in like whatever you do with the password, at the end it is vulnerable to attacks, right? How do we do in a how do we ensure that account management and password is done in the right way? We can make passwords complicated. You use all sort of a combination of caps lock and smaller case and numbers and all sort of special characters, right? That's how we complicate the passwords. Then we can ensure that these are not compromised passwords. So we can go and check on the compromised password. We can ensure that they are no more compromised kind of a scenario. Now we can rotate them periodically. What happens? We change the password. Then at the end, what we are doing it is basically for the ease of use. We are writing down them somewhere, right? And if that noted it somewhere on a text file and everything. Now, this all feed to a password compromise scenario, right? Now, on top of that, now if we avoid writing down it somewhere or noting it down somewhere, again you have choices, right? So at the end, we admins uses in a machine to log in. Now, if that machine is infected with a keylogger or a malicious website, or so like malwares or cameras, it can capture your passwords. Uh, Even a guy stands next to just behind you, he can do a shoulder surfing and get your password. Now that's these kind of passwords are always I mean, uh, this all kind of passwords can be compromised with all these particular things, right? Now, how do we enhance? So there was always a mechanism which we are looking at to improve that, right? So that's nothing but integrating that within a multi-factor authentication or a two-factor authentication with help of a SAML or any token-based application, which is like in our case, I'm taking an example of ADFS. Right now, the best benefit of ADFS, what is the benefit of ADFS is nothing but it's a well adopted option which is currently used in almost all the corporate identity provider, right? So this can be easily integrated to multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. Let's look at how the flows work. Now, what we have to do is we basically have to do in a federation with the vCenter server has to be federated with an Active Directory federation servers, right? I'm taking a simple example. There are multiple other options, right? So to integrate with. Now, the best part is when we follow something like an federation servers. This also help us to centralize the corporate processes. Like you don't have any individual passwords, right? So if the employee leaves the company or if an employee joins the company, as and when you create an identity in your Active Directory, or when you remove that identity from the Active Directory, what happens is you follow the standard process. If you have a governance in place, so your identity is revoked, right? So you don't no more need to go manually remove, add those kind of scenarios. Now, what happens when you integrate with your vSphere, vCenter altogether? When when an admin logs into the portal, he's redirected to the vSphere client, right? Then particularly that goes to Active Directory Federation service. And if you have an MFA or a 2FA integration, right, that validates there and ensures it is not authenticated with the password, it is also authenticated within a second factor, which is ensuring that security is enhanced to the next level, right? So then this gives us a next layer of security. So this is ensuring that once that particular MFA Active Directory authenticated, this goes back to the interface, and that gives the authorization for the particular users to access the vCenter server. Next, let's look at vSphere Trust Authority. So this is again another set of security enhancement. This will help us to leverage or utilize the hardware TPMs, right? That ensures an additional layer of security, right? So with this, what we can particularly with the vSphere Trust Authority, what we will be doing is we'll be building in basically in a trusted host set. And we can again go back and we can follow still the key manager scenario, like in a KMS kind of a scenario, right? We all know how we used to protect and encrypt VMs, right? So we used to have the key manager scenarios, and we can still integrate that with your key manager. Now, an important point to know, for us to enable this trust authority, all the hardware should be aligned to TPM 2.0 support, right? this should support. This is a must component for us to enable trust authority. Now let's understand like what is basically a trust authority. Trust authority is nothing but let's take an example. Consider this as a hardware root for the trust, right? So this is basically how we establish is like we mentioned, we can have like in a smaller cluster which is very secure and enhanced security. It's not populated with lots of users, right? And it's a normal cluster at the end, right? Normal cluster with an enhanced security. In case certain infrastructure, if you don't want to invest heavily on this particular functionality, I'm sure whoever is looking at in a vSphere trust authority, they don't mind investing another set of servers, right? That's the security requirement which they wanted to fulfill. Now, even in that case, if they don't want to invest on a separate cluster, we can leverage the existing management cluster to serve as a vSphere trust authority. Right, so this is making it a little more easy, relaxed. So if somebody wanted to look at this, we can do that as an vSphere trust authority of an existing management. Right now, there are like a key critical path taken out. Say for example, how we used to do, we used to have a key management server, KMIP protocols communicate to vCenter, then vCenter used to authenticate and authorize. This is no more critical path in this vSphere trust authority scenario. Now, the reason being the keys and everything is maintained, and this is managed by vSphere trust authority, right? Now, there is another functionality which we call it as an attestation of the host, right? How you're doing it is basically leveraging the TPM chips. We can attest the host basically to the cluster and ensure that these are more secure. Now, since VTA handles the security keys and the encryption key, even if that host fails attestation, this particularly holds the key from releasing from it, right? Now, this will help us to prevent secure workload. Let's consider a secure workload, which is we are running on a particular cluster. That won't move, or that won't boot up, or that gives an additional layer of security from one particular host to another one, right? So this is a kind of an enhanced security which we can provide in this particular with the vSphere trust authority functionality. Let's move to the next one, which is basically an assignable hardware. Assignable hardware is nothing but, like we all know, we struggled with the cards, right? The additional PCI instances, right? Say for example, if we have a GPU, if we have a network cards, if we have a fax card, we used to pin them, we used to put them into particular host, right? And if that fails, it goes for a toss, right? We cannot take advantages of HAs and DRS, right? So if that's particularly host, that particular VM contained into that particular host. Now with the new improvement on vSphere 7, what we can do is we can move these VMs across multiple hosts, as long as the VMs, the particular hardware is similar hardware is available on the next host which is moving, right? So same PCI hardware, if that's available, say GPU is available on the next host, it can easily move across, right? So that enables us like a good advantages, like for example VDI scenario, or like we mentioned about the fax scenario. I mean, many of the cards we are not using this, but still it's a good scenario to be discussed, right? So this is what we are covering in assignable hardware. Now let's look at what that we improved in DRS, right? So DRS had gone through a good change. Now with, like for example, old DRS, how this was functioning earlier was, Basically, DRS is calculated based on the ESXi host memory and the CPU, right? And all we used to look at is basically if we have a 3 hosts, we used to weigh them based on their free resources, memory, be it CPU. We used to do this checks, the scheduled checks every 5 minutes, right? Now with let's call this as an DRS1, right? For example, now with the DRS2, I mean, there is no term as DRS. I'm just referring them, right? With the DRS2, the functionality which it gives is basically it uses something called VM DRS scores, right? Instead of focusing on utilization of the ESXi host, uh, we are looking at a DRS score calculated based on some other parameters, right? So basically these three parameters or metrics, let me call it, these are VM performance, right? The VM performance is nothing but the readiness of the CPU and the memory swap and the cache behavior. This all gives a VM performance, right? This calculated under VM performance. Now let's go to the capacity on the ESXi host. This also the similar way, right? And so earlier this was the only factor for us to decide the DRS. Now this is one of the factor, right, for us to have this DRS functionality. Now then the next one was like VMotion cost. This is basically again just like multiple factors factor into moving from one VM to another host is what we are considering on this. Now, including all of these three, we are assigning a DRS score for the particular particular VM, right? So we score them with all these three metrics. Now, so the major difference in DRS1, the previous DRS release, it was more of a cluster centric. Say, for example, what are the resources available across the cluster, the host and the cluster. That decides where to move the VMs, right? Now, instead of in the DRS2, instead of cluster centric, this has moved to a VM score centric. Now, this is basically this is put on a VM machine happiness, right? How happy is the VM, right? So based on that, it moves across the host. Now, another improvement is basically the DRS check. The scheduled check used to happen every 5 minutes in the previous one. Now that has improved and reduced to every 1 minute, right? Now that gives us a very improved calculation, right? And it helps us to take immediate decisions, right, based on the inputs. Now, instead of checking 5 minutes, checking every 1 minute and immediately takes a decision. So that helps us to take immediate decisions on that, right? This is basically on an improved distributed resource scheduler. What is the improvement, like we mentioned, right? Now let's look at what is the improvement of the VMotions. Now, the larger VM support, which is introduced in the latest release, it can the VM resource maximums are set to 256 vCPUs and 6 terabyte of memory. Now these VMs are called monster VMs, right? These are real monster VMs. Now, even this particular VMs are supported for an VMotions, right? So how we are doing it. Before we going there are still challenges doing a VMotion for this large VMs. That's not from a VMware perspective. This all from a workload perspective, right? So the customers running with large VMs, they are not comfortable doing in a live migrations on these VMs. That will be the case for all the workloads. This is basically more from a workload perspective. However, we have this functionality in VMware. What we can do is we can always support large VMs, right? So maybe it is not 256, but at least, larger than what we used to handle before. We can do all that. Now, how we are doing it? The VMotion process, it's basically starts with installing a page tracer that tracks all the changes in the memory pages, right? That's during all the migration. We are moving the VMs from another to another. This all tracked in that particular page tracer. Now that particular tracer get installed on the vCPUs, which gives much better performance, large VM during live migration. It doesn't require any other additional component. Now, while the final cutover happens of the phase of the live vMotion, there's always a stun time, right? So that stun time is what is the best part of it. During this stun time, the source ESXi host used to send all this captured information as an bitmap containing all the remaining memory pages, right? So that's how we ensure that it's sent over and that last minute changes are captured and the in-memory things are captured. With vSphere 7, what happened is it's only transmit a very minimal compacted version of this bitmap, which is basically reduced in size. So this will help us the last minute stun to happen in immediate basis. Now, this is basically an vMotion improvement which is introduced in the vSphere 7. Now let's look at the most interesting functionality, right? We all talk about Kubernetes, we all talk about application modernization, everything. Now, in any infrastructure, we used to have, like earlier, vSphere, and obviously people who was tracking the Kubernetes development in VMware. We all know Project Specific was particularly launched for this Kubernetes introduction, right? Now, with the vSphere 7, we natively support the Kubernetes, right? Which is basically the best platform, let me put it in that way, popular, easy platform for application modernization, right? Now, what's the best, right? So it's the same VMware administrator who's managing the VMware infrastructure can easily manage this Kubernetes workload as well. I mean, there's no upscaling. Maybe a smaller bit of bridging the gap, because all your interfaces, UIs, everything is going to be same. Only the delta change which you have to do in a smaller training and get up to the speed, right? This is a really massive step for vSphere right now. It is not just at that particular managing few Kubernetes. It also introduced application modernization, converting them to a modern application. It helps to manage Kubernetes across multiple platforms. There is a lot of enhancement comes in the Kubernetes, right? Now, like I mentioned, I mean, there is a skill, we can heavily decrease the skill gap running a separate or hiring in a new guy to manage your Kubernetes. Now, the same guy will be able to manage the same Kubernetes, right? So that's another one. Now, this will help a lot of customers, a lot of companies to adopt Kubernetes, because they were all scared of managing another beast, right? So Kubernetes and those kind of thing can be reduced, and since the same person is going to manage it and maintain it, I'm sure companies will start adopting Kubernetes in much faster way, because they already have a platform which is running and they're trusted and running it for ages, right? Now, so with that introduction, so this natively support Kubernetes for us, right? So the kernels required, the components are included in the vSphere code level itself, right? Now, what is that we require to run vSphere 7 with the Kubernetes. What is that we required? Currently, it requires in a VMware Cloud Foundation services licenses. Reason being, it is not just the Kubernetes. It required an orchestrated approach on your network security, load balancing. All that competence comes into a play. So it is not just that only your ESXi or the vSphere which does this functionality, right? So what we are looking at is basically a VMware Cloud Foundation, which is in a much better orchestrated platform, and at least 3 ESXi hosts need to be part of this Kubernetes workload. Right, so for us to run the Kubernetes workload, we need to have 3 minimum nodes and a VMware Cloud Foundation services. So this is basically a functionality, and people start adopting it much faster. So it's a one good thing for us to capture, or one good thing to learn. I'm sure it's not that on a big. So if a customer running in a VMware Cloud Foundation service, we all know how easy it is to manage, right? It is just a single interface wherein you manage your SDN, SDS, your hypervisor, everything from one. So it's one more component which was missing for all the companies to adopt. People were scared of this. So with all this, VMware VCF will help us to introduce one more very powerful service to the infrastructure, right? So that's basically looking at the Kubernetes. Now let's look at what's been removed from the vSphere 7, right? Just give me a second. With that vSphere 7, we don't have we no more have the vSphere web client, right? Any which is, it was pain, right? For all of us, we know that it uses an Adobe Flash player that's prone to be like introducing a lot of security issues to the infrastructure. And I personally faced a lot of hanging issues when I used to manage infrastructure, right? So we know that it's not a very favorite thing which for many of us. So I don't mind VMware removing that particular vSphere web client functionality, right? So vSphere 7, just HTML5 client, much easier. Browse it from web browser, be it mobile, it adopts, right? So that's a much better way to manage it. Now we don't have a external platform service controller, so it is for all our ease and simplified administration and management. There is no need, or there is no way to deploy an external PSC, right? So it's all included in the vCenter. Now let's look at the next one, which is Update Manager plugin. Now it should have been done much faster. So now Update Manager is currently replaced with the Lifecycle Manager. Like we have gone through that, what is covered there, right? It is not just any more patches or updates of the ESXi. Always, it includes your hardware as well. That spreads the coverage to even include your hardware firmwares and drivers and even the third-party components. Now we don't have Windows support for the vCenter anymore. Even though I'm not a big fan of this, but it's done, right? It's performed. Now, if we have a vCenter server on Windows, we should look at migrating them to a vCenter server appliance. So the part for that is basically migrate them to a vCenter server appliance. Now, many of these users used to use VNC servers to log in and manage this kind of thing, right? So that's been removed. That's no more there. They will not be able to use a VNC, a virtual machine using a VNC client, right? Instead of we need to use the vSphere client or the VMware remote console to connect the virtual machine. Few more things. With the vSphere 7, the protocol support, those component old TLS protocols as removed for the security reasons, right? And individuals they were just sitting idle, right? Now we can perform image level backup with supported vendors, like a few of them are like Rubrix, Weboo, who uses a vSphere storage APIs. So with that, VMware vSphere supported vendors, we can straight away perform backup ops the vCenter, right? Now, we also deprecated this DCU direct access smart card authentication functionality from this, right? Now, with that, I wanted to, I mean, this is the last slide for the session. I just wanted to quickly do the next steps, right? How we can upgrade to the vSphere 7, how easy it is. Now, the good thing, best part is we already have a vSphere assessment tools, which can be leveraged and used, not just for an on-prem services. We can also use this to assess our infrastructure, right? This will help us the entire journey of software-defined VMware thing, right? So be it in a HCI infrastructure, be it in a hybrid cloud, be it hosting a VMware cloud on AWS, right? So we need to do a sanity check before we take that decision to move to the latest version. So this particular tool help us to prepare and perform the assessment and gives us an amazing result. I'll walk you through in a video on this, so we'll get a fair idea about that, right? Now, this help us in enhance security, operational efficiency. This will even help us to go through and understand the utilization of the VM, and it will advise what if we can reduce the resources available that and provision other additional VM, which is an interesting, right? So with that, what I will do is, I mean, end of the slide, I'll just quickly take you through a quick video about how we use this vSphere tool. Guys, can you see my screen?
Yes.
With the video, I mean.
Yes, we can. Yep, we can hear you.
Everyone. Today, I would like to provide a quick tour of our brand new vSphere assessment tool, or VSAT for short. The vSphere assessment tool will help you run an analysis of your vSphere environment and will be able to provide crucial insights into your hardware compatibility to prepare you for any vSphere upgrades or digital transformation in your vSphere environment. Let's jump right in on how this tool works. From the vSphere Assessment Tool homepage, click on the Get Started button. You will then be prompted to log in or create a new account. Our logins are integrated with My VMware ID, so you can reuse your existing My VMware credentials to log in. Once you are logged in, you'll be able to see the 3 steps you will need to take in order to run the tool. Step 1 is to download the desktop component of the VSAT tool. This is required to collect the information on your vSphere environment's hardware and to determine hardware compatibility. The desktop component is available on multiple platforms. Here we are going to download and run the Mac version of the tool. Steps 2 and 3 are 2 different methods for uploading the results into the tool. I will talk about these 2 methods after we run a collection with the desktop component. Once the desktop component has been installed and launched, click the Start button. You can then add a vCenter server or multiple vCenter servers to run the tool against. When adding a new vCenter, you will need to provide the vCenter URL and a username and password. We recommend an administrator account, but you can also create a custom role in vCenter with host settings enabled. Once you've added in all the vCenters you would like to run a collection against, click Run Data Collection. Now that we have collected the vSphere information, we can upload the data into the VSAT portal to analyze compatibility and provide an easy-to-review dashboard of the data. There are two methods to upload data into the portal, online or offline mode. If you wish to upload your results at a later date, you can save a local copy to your desktop. This file can be uploaded into the VSAT portal. If you would like to upload your information directly to the portal, you can send the collection using the online method. Click Send Collected Data and you will be prompted to provide a passcode. By default, all accounts have a unique passcode associated to their account, ensuring that the data is sent securely to your dashboard. Your VSAT passcode can be retrieved from the Forgot VSAT passcode or through the portal, as you can see here. The dashboard view provides a user-friendly interface for customers to explore and to navigate the uploaded results. Customers can drill down from the vCenter server to specific hosts using the left pane navigation, much like in the vSphere client. The summary view provides a breakdown of the different editions of vSphere in your estate and provides insight into which hosts are at risk of unsupported versions of vSphere. Additionally, you will also have access to ebooks and upgrade resources that will help you along your journey to digital transformation. To get additional information on the host, simply click any host in the host table to display the host details. The host details panel displays the information on the current vSphere version, server model, network, and storage adapters. Each vSphere version and hardware component indicates if support has been verified. This has been a brief look at the vSphere assessment tool.
I think with that, we all understand how easy it is to perform an assessment and decide our journey to vSphere 7 and all this platform, right? So we can use really this VSAT tool that's going to help us the all journey for us. Now with that, I'm done with my presentation. So if you have any questions, we can take them. I'll try to answer them. We'll try to answer them. And
yeah, we have some questions in the QA chat window, so maybe you would like to use them.
sure. Let me just go through them. I'll just stop sharing the screen. Yeah.
Just before you start going through the questions, I would like to share some Kubernetes resources with the the attendees post the QA session. So if you guys can just stay with us like 5 minutes after the we conclude the QA, we'll really appreciate this.
Sure. So the first question again, is there a roadmap to support Lenovo servers? Not really sure, but we can check. I mean, it's a joined scenario, right? So it has to be give and take. So Lenovo provides this particular set of tools at VMware consume it. It's like the API story, right? So as that's really need to be answered by a Lenovo vendor, right? Let's look at boot bank directory size. ESXi require more space. Accommodate. Right. So we'll be requiring that additional boot bank directory. So that's what I could understand from the documents. I think I answered the VLCM support. As per my best understanding, currently I have seen HP and Dell providing this VLCM particularly functionality for now. We can definitely check that and get back to you on this particular question. Yes, we can. Okay, so the question was, does this VLCM support or can be used for hyperconverged infrastructure? Yes, we can use them. We can definitely use them to use as long as Dell, knowing Dell is the first one to release this functionality or hand in hand working with the VMware, right? So again, Nutanix part, I may have to check and come back to you, right? Vendor add-ons can be done without direct access. Yes, we can do that. We can have a downloaded image, but the whole point of introducing this vendor add-on directly integration is to ease that, right? So that's important, right? We can definitely download them and use them. Can we select a specific version right now? So that the whole purpose of VLCM is, and also we looked at the HCL integration. That's basically ensuring the supported version functionality firmware add-ons, right? So that does check an automatic check. So I don't think, okay, so if your question is basically it is supported, but again, when we do a next check on the supportability firmware and add-ons, that will specifically advise you to go to the latest supported version, so we can skip those particular functionality. VLCM will be able to deal with the VMs which are having RDMs. RDMs being in a story. Let me take this question. Let me get back to you on that particular functionality, right? I have not specifically tested or checked or read about this, so I don't want to give you wrong information on this. Now, there's another question, basically support MFA. Can ADFS VM is under the same data center managed by vCenter server, or it should be separate? Again, it's kind of a master of master scenario, right? So if you wanted to monitor a scenario, you will not definitely put that in the same. So advice to have as a separate cluster, or you don't want to fail that MFA or ADFS machine. Now, knowing Microsoft services, ADFS, you can introduce in a high available scenario of ADFS. And now another option is look at extending this to cloud. Again, then the security may be creating little questions there. So it is high availability is taken care by the ADFS VM. Sorry, the ADFS high availability should be taken care by the service itself, and we can put them into same vCenter. We can move them into a different one. Moving to a different one would be always advisable. Adding FS is adding additional layer of troubleshooting, and as a result, additional fail point. Sorry, I didn't get that question. If Mr. Mohammed, if you can just explain me, or what do you mean by adding FS? Rajesh, can you unmute? Okay.
I think it's a federation service, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So that's what yeah.
Hello, this is Mohammed Havarna.
Hi, Mohammed.
Hi. My question was usually we use the web client to authenticate directly to the integrated Active Directory. Now, adding federation service, can adding more pain point during the troubleshooting, and there's an extension of this question, which is, now, what if the ADFS was unavailable for any reason? What's the impact on our login and our integration setup?
we still have the option to log in using the single sign-on scenario. This is just an enhanced version of it, right? It is not locking down your login at the point. So we still have an option to log in.
Okay, thank you.
Let me take next question. If my AD already have an Azure AD configured. Yes, we can use if it is an Azure AD, provided you open and enable the communication back to your infrastructure, right? So that may be not a favorable one if you have a strong security team. You may have to defend saying that, you know, you are opening that door from the internet. So that this need a organizational approval or acceptance, right? Use case for these trust is storage required installing compared to old versions when what if we have an HSM? Can we use that? That's from Murtaza. You mean, can you just give me a brief? What is this HSM component which you are?
Yes, I mean that vSphere Trust Authority. Can we save the vSphere Trust Authority keys to direct to HSM?
Yes, we can integrate. Yes.
We can show this thing.
For improved DRS, since the time has reduced to 1 minute, is there any danger of VM moving here and there more frequently due to the changing VM workload, right? No, we can set a threshold for that. At what threshold we need to move. Yes, that's kind of a manual override, right, or an attribute for this. Then the next question was, can we have DRS? Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that we don't have anything called as, if we start looking at DRS 1 and 2, we don't see it, right? So it's just for ease of discussion, I mentioned it as an DRS 1. My understanding, DRS 1 and 2, we cannot have them. And if in this specifically on the same cluster, we cannot have them, right? With the working method. Now, we are planning to have times sessions. Yeah, I think Marwan mentioned sharing some questions. Okay, so the question was for 3 ESXi nodes under VCF. So this is basically a minimum requirement, right? And we all know VCF was not starting with 3 ESXi host that has a management stack, and we have also the tenant stacks, right? So we see, as long as we have an ESXi, this is basically to ease the movement of the VM. So this is kind of a minimum number of node in the cluster. So Suresh question was, how about if we upgrade TP vSphere 7 from the earlier version of with external PC? So let me share some document on that. I'll maybe when I'm sharing the presentation, I'll try to share that link, right? Right, no more vCenter image level backup. Yes, it has to be in a combination of a supported backup vendor, so we can use them. I'm not sure if there is a free way of using this if we have an Enterprise Plus. So it like I mentioned, I mean, it is really depends on what kind of an underlying infrastructure. As we speak currently, the Kubernetes required a VCF to be in place, right? So that supports the Kubernetes networks. Like I mentioned, I mean, there are multiple components to be taken care of, right? So we all know the pain of managing multiple things. So VCF makes it much easier. So this will be easy. And I'm not sure if there is, I don't think we have a way to just use it with an enterprise plus license, but however, I can check that and come back. I think Rajesh, with this, I have tried to answer all of the question. If anything, if I missed, we can respond back to the guys when we are replying to that email, right, with the presentation.
Yeah. Thanks, Subinson. Anyway, we will put these all the questions answers in the VMUG page in a PDF file. So no worries. If something is missing, we can answer it in this file itself.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for giving an opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Subinson.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Marwan, you want to tell something about next session, right?
This is actually, it's not meant to be another session. It's just maybe I would call it like a small introduction, to the sessions that we will be having in June. Okay, so in June, we are planning to have sessions discussing, the new enhancement in vSphere 7, specifically, the Kubernetes on vSphere. Okay. Now, for that, if you guys actually would like to get the utmost benefit of these sessions, I would really recommend, that you start brushing up your skills in Kubernetes. So basically, if you have no idea what Kubernetes is, I would really recommend, you start learning about Kubernetes through the resources I'm going to share right now. If you guys have already a background about Kubernetes, then definitely this is good. Okay. Because as Sponson said, that you might no longer need to have a separate administrator now for your Kubernetes cluster, but you definitely need to have someone who is having the knowledge of microservices and containers in order, to manage the vSphere plus the Kubernetes as well. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to show you some resources actually that actually are very good, for someone who would like to start his learning journey, in Kubernetes. Okay, so if you guys can see my screen, okay, the first, resource is the Cube Academy. I have already shared a post on the LinkedIn community page about Cube Academy. This is a VMware, project. Okay, it's basically aimed, at providing bite-sized classes, or courses for Kubernetes and containers. If you browse, the content here, you should see actually a wide spectrum of courses. It basically starts, from the containers 101 up to, getting ready to take your CKA exam. Okay, so it's a free. So basically all what you need to do, just register and start, taking the courses. Okay. What I would actually also recommend, if you don't have any background about containers, then you better start first by learning containers, and then you move your way up to Kubernetes, okay? Because at the end, Kubernetes is nothing but an orchestration, okay? It basically orchestrates containers. So you definitely want to know what a container is before learning, what the orchestrator can do. Now, the second resource also I would like to share with you is Katacoda. Okay, so Katacoda is a free website. It has been recently acquired by O'Reilly. I'm sure most of you will be aware about it. It's basically providing free playgrounds. It's a scenario based also for most of the new trends and technologies in IT. So as you can see here, there's scenarios related to Docker, Kubernetes. Some of them are machine learning, continuous integration, and it's all free. You just need to register, okay, and then you can access this playground. The playground is usually lasts for 60 minutes, okay. And of course, once you finish, so whatever data you have or whatever, work you have done will definitely be erased, So usually the lifetime of these are 60 minutes. It can be used also as a quick lab, if you need a quick playground to test something, then I would really recommend, using Katacoda. The third resource is a website which is called Instruct. Okay, Instruct is similar to Katacoda. It's also a free website. It is providing, like free playground for majority of the, recent technologies. Okay, like again, Docker. There is also console, by HashiCorp, Git. So basically, it is similar to Kubernetes. Okay, sorry, to Katacoda. Now, the last also thing I would like to mention is if you guys are planning to take the CKE exam, the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam, which is, is powered by the Linux Foundation. Basically, there is a discount going on the website for the last 2 months. So you get a 30% discount if you register, for the CKE exam. Now, once you buy the exam, you can take it in a year's time. Okay, you don't have to take it immediately. So you have 1 year, to prepare. So if you are planning, to get certified, whether, in the CKA or the CKAD, I would really recommend, seizing this opportunity and maybe buy the voucher. There is also a bundle, which is basically the exam and bundle. If you can get it, it's fine. At the end, both of them actually comes with a 30% discount. Finally, if you are actually willing, to have, let's say, a local lab, maybe in your laptop, I would highly recommend, using Minikube. Okay, so Minikube is it's a free tool. All what you need to do is just having VirtualBox installed. Okay. And then you can install Minikube. Once you download, the Minikube binaries, you can just basically run the command Minikube start, and it will build, a single node Kubernetes cluster. This can be used, also for a lab purpose. It supports also a multi-node cluster. However, this is experimental. So I have tried also, like deploying 3 nodes just by adding a flag -n = 2 or 3. However, usually I'm having a challenge when I'm stopping the cluster and they're starting it again. So I believe it's an experimental feature. Okay, but this is one of the fastest way also to get you started, with Kubernetes on your local, laptop, as a playground. Okay, so I hope you guys find this information useful. If you need any further information, you can either contact me or Rajesh. Okay. So with that, I believe we can conclude the session. I wish you, Eid Mubarak, and we'll see you soon in June, inshallah.
Thank you, Marwan, and thanks everyone for joining this session. So hope we'll have another session in June with a more detailed session about Kubernetes and Tanzu, vSphere 7, all those things. So we will be planning series of session on June. So before that, as Marwan mentioned, you guys can just go through these links and the website to brush up your skills to learn more on Kubernetes. So anyway, we will share all these links in the group and VMUG page. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you.